This is Cure Top with you, and these are 100 mysterious objects, the purpose of which is still debated. 5 skeletons that shouldn't exist. In the spring of 2024, archaeologists in Poland made a strange discovery. Under the rubble of one of the buildings in the Wolf's Lair complex, the former residence of the Nazi leadership, human remains were found. 5 skeletons, 3 adults, a teenager, and an infant. All without feet and hands, without any identification, without clothing, without explanation. This part of the complex belonged to Hermann Göring. It was here that he held closed meetings. There were no outsiders here, and there certainly couldn't have been any burials. The area was heavily guarded, and only a few people had access to these rooms. The identities of these people are still unknown. No dental prostheses, papers, or military dog tags were found. Only skeletons, strangely arranged as if someone had deliberately staged the scene. The execution theory? But then who is the infant? The ritual theory? Archaeologists do not rule it out. In the final days of the Reich, something irrational, almost religious, was happening. Hitler himself was convinced of the sacred role of this war. He believed that the struggle of the Third Reich was not just politics, but the revival of an ancient order. Why were these particular bodies found at the center of the lair? Why weren't they taken away, buried, but simply left in the basement? And why, during their retreat, did the Nazis spend their efforts not on saving, but on destroying the bunkers, blowing everything up as if they were afraid not of the advancing Soviet army, but of future archaeologists? Maybe it wasn't about these bodies at all, but about what was hidden nearby, something that wasn't supposed to remain after them, something they kept as a secret. Where was the ark kept? Shiloh in the center of Israel is called the main sanctuary of the era before the Jerusalem temple. Here, the foundation of a rectangular building measuring 31 by 15.5 meters was excavated. The exact proportion 2:1, and the orientation is strictly east-west. These are exactly the parameters described in Exodus for the portable sanctuary of the tabernacle, essentially a tent temple. Inside, a massive partition was found, dividing the space into 2 parts, the sanctuary and an isolated room like the Holy of Holies, where, according to biblical tradition, the ark was kept. The main evidence is not in the walls, but in the number of sacrifices. Over 100,000 bones of sheep, goats, and cattle, dated to around 1,200 to 1,000 before Christ. In 97% of cases, the right side of the carcasses is facing up. This matches the prescription in the book of Leviticus, where the right part is given to the priest. Such a profile is not typical for an ordinary settlement, but is normal for a cult center with regular sacrifices. So far, this is not proof of the location of the ark as an object, but archaeology provides what the text lacked: exact dimensions, orientation, layout, and kitchen traces of the ritual. There are too many coincidences to see Shiloh as an ordinary courtyard. It looks like the address of a sanctuary that for centuries was searched for only in books. Myths. If the Nazis were truly inventive in anything, it was in how they rewrote myths. Almost any ancient culture where echoes of power, ritual, or sacrifice could be found was turned into yet another Aryan source. And it didn't matter how historically accurate it was. The main thing was that it sounded impressive. With the Vikings, it was simple. They were taken as an example of pure masculinity: runes, swords, images of grim heroism. It was because of this logic that Himmler tried to turn the SS not into an army, but into a cult, with its own symbols, rituals, even places of power. That same Beuvelsburg castle was supposed to become something like a new Valhalla, a temple for the future caste of priest warriors. With the Aztecs, it's more complicated, the geography is too distant. But the Nazis were interested in the practice of sacrifices. They were attracted by the very idea, ritual death as an act of power and subjugation. The Ahnenerbe notes similarities between Germanic myths and pre-Columbian American mythologies. Perhaps they were not looking for connections, but for justification. They needed to prove that human life is a resource, that sacrifice can be sacred and controlled. And then there's Atlantis. There were no boundaries here at all. There were many theories, but they adopted one of them. Allegedly, the Atlanteans were the Proto-Aryans, a tall white race possessing technology and knowledge, destroyed by a catastrophe. And the mission of the Reich was to reclaim what was lost, to reinterpret the fall, to build a new order from the old ruins. The Nazis didn't just believe in these stories, they built a whole structure, an architecture of meaning out of them, which they used to justify their power. And that's exactly why all of this is still frightening to this day. For them, myths were not fairy tales, but blueprints. A colony of ice fish. A group of scientists drilled through a thick layer of ice and lowered a camera half a kilometer down. They saw tens of thousands of round nests, each about the size of a bicycle wheel in diameter. And in each nest lives an adult fish, guarding more than 2,000 of its future offspring. The cameras recorded more than 12,000 of these fish. The total area of the spawning ground is about 240 square kilometers. These fish are called Lidyanaya because of their unique ability to withstand extreme cold. Their blood contains special substances similar to antifreeze, which allows them to live in the harsh conditions of Antarctica. As you can see, despite the cold, life in Antarctica is vibrant and thriving. The Ice Age wasn't caused by a meteorite. At least that's what the authors of a recent study claim, having determined the exact date of the onset of the late Dryas cooling. The late Dryas, which began about 12,900 years ago and lasted for around 1,200 years, was a period of extreme climatic conditions. A sharp cooling occurred then in just a few years and interrupted the Alarid warming when the Earth had a climate similar to today's. Since the last ice age that resulted from this cooling is separated from us by a relatively short period of time, scientists can study it with a fairly high degree of accuracy. They managed to determine the moment of abrupt climate change with an approximate margin of error of 100 years. But as Professor Christoph Spettel from the University of Innsbruck says, even such accuracy is not enough. A lot of events and processes could have happened in 100 years. So the research group tried to specify the date of the onset of the Ice Age by using previously obtained ice samples and flowstone samples they collected in caves in China, India, Uzbekistan, Brazil, and Spain. As a result, it turned out that the cooling began in the North Atlantic 12,870 years ago, and from there, the movement of atmospheric and oceanic masses spread it to the south. Spettel noted that scientists had made similar assumptions before, but these were not confidently proven until now. At the end of the glacial period, the process went in the opposite direction. Warming began in the southern hemisphere, or the tropical regions of the Pacific Ocean, then moved northward. The oldest rune stone in the world. The largest number of rune stones were left behind by the Vikings during the 9th to 11th centuries. The newest stones were dated to the 19th century. A discovery made by archaeologists in Norway recently broke all records. From now on, the oldest rune stone is considered to be an artifact that is 2,000 years old. An inscription is carved on a flat, square, brownish sandstone, which is considered the earliest writing in Scandinavia. Archaeologists have already found older runes, but they were not on stones. The earliest runic find was discovered on a bone comb that was found in Denmark. I recently talked about it in detail. This stone may be one of the first in history on which ancient Norwegians and Scandinavians carved runes. And once again, the same story. The find was discovered during the excavation of a grave near Tyrifjord, west of Oslo, in 2021. But only in 2023 were scientists able to complete their research and date the runestone. The stone was found in a cremation pit, along with charred bones and charcoal. It was dated between the 1st and 250th year AD. It was previously believed that the first runes on stones could have appeared in the 300s or 400s AD. There are several types of inscriptions on the stone, some of which scholars cannot read. 8 runes on the front side of the stone are read as Idabaruk. This could be the name of a woman, a man, or a family. Findings during the construction of the highway. Numerous artifacts dating back to the Stone Age, 10,000 years before Christ's Bronze Age, ground structures and burials from the middle of the 2nd millennium before Christ's 3 large medieval settlements from the 12th to 14th centuries, as well as various BTV items and tools from different eras, were discovered by expeditions of the Institute of Archaeology of the Russian Academy of Sciences during the preparation of the territory for the construction of the Moscow-Nizhny Novgorod-Kazan Highway, a project being implemented by the state company Avtodor. In total, archaeologists studied almost 500 kilometers of the future highway, which is about 200 square meters, where they discovered 25 archaeological heritage sites in the Vladimir and Nizhny Novgorod regions and Chuvashia. Such large-scale excavations, and therefore the study of monuments, are only possible when examining archaeological sites that fall within the construction zone. Let's move briefly to the Middle Ages. Thanks to the excavations carried out before the construction of the highway, for the first time scientists were able to identify the layout of pre-Mongol settlements in the Volga-Oka interfluve and establish the manor-like layout of villages from the 12th century. Each settlement had its own unique history, but there are common features in their layouts. For example, traces of palisade fences and cellars located directly beneath above-ground residential buildings were found at all the identified sites. Among the interesting high-status finds is medieval agricultural equipment, which indicates a high level of economic development and the well-being of the population, since iron was expensive, as well as items of weaponry and military equipment, fragments, amphorae, writing style, book clasps, buckles, pectoral crosses, earrings, and bracelets. Objects related to writing, writer's equipment, and prestigious jewelry indicate that people of high status lived in the settlement. This is the Murom nobility of the 12th century. All artifacts discovered during the excavations will be thoroughly studied and transferred to museum collections. The excavations were preceded by a historical and cultural assessment of the area for the future construction of M12 Moscow-Nizhny Novgorod-Kazan, which made it possible to collect initial data about the sites and determine their boundaries. 6,000-year-old human DNA. In the city of Wuxi in China, archaeologists discovered the DNA of a person who lived here 6,000 years ago. These molecules were found in 2 tombs associated with the Meiji culture of the Middle Neolithic era. Until now, information about the inhabitants of this region was limited. However, thanks to the new discoveries, it has become known that the first people settled in Wuxi at least 6,000 years ago. During the research that began in April 2022, more than 100 traces of ancient human activity were found, including 2 tombs with DNA. A cloak made from a single piece of gold. In 1833, a golden cloak made of pure gold was found in North Wales. It was discovered by workers in the town of Mold, in a mysterious place called Fairy Hill. According to legends, mysterious creatures lived here who could either bring happiness or, on the contrary, harm lost travelers. There were rumors that treasures were buried underground, guarded by fierce sentinels clad in golden armor. On October 11, 1833, a major landowner named Lingford sent his workers to the hill, where they stumbled upon an ancient burial site. At that very moment, a clergyman named Charles Butler Coe was passing by and immediately recognized the stone box as a tomb. Further excavations were carried out under his supervision. Inside the sarcophagus were the remains of a person and a golden cloak that covered them. All of this had been badly damaged by time and began to crumble at the slightest touch. The deceased was wearing an amber necklace made of 200 to 300 beads, but only one has survived to this day. The priest recognized the find's value and told Lingford to leave everything untouched while he wrote to the Society of Antiquaries. For some unknown reason, he received a reply only 3 years later. During this time, some of the gold was dispersed, only 1 bead remained from the necklace, and the bones were not considered valuable at all, and were most likely simply buried in the ground. Despite this, the London Museum bought the surviving treasure from the landowner. It took 100 years to find and piece together all the parts of the pelerine. Research showed that it was made between 1900 and 1600 before Christ. Its width was 45.8 centimeters. Based on such modest dimensions, it can be said that a rather fragile person was buried under them. The accompanying find suggests that it was a woman. The cape was made from a single piece of gold. Almost its entire surface is covered with ornamentation, crafted with astonishing delicacy. It consists of indentations and protrusions, neat rows of round and oval beads, and small pyramids. To make the artifact, a gold ingot the size of a tennis ball was needed. The cape weighs 560 grams. Fire, people, and dogs. Saxony-Anhalt, Germany, the Gerstowitz area. Archaeologists have discovered 12 deep pits, up to 2.5 meters deep, dating from 3,400 to 3,050 before Christ. This is the Salzmunde culture, a local branch of the funnel beaker culture. The composition of the finds shows not an ordinary garbage layer, but recurring rituals. In the pits lie charred remains of structures, whole ceramic vessels, and bones of humans and dogs. In one complex, a dog was preserved anatomically intact with traces of fire. Nearby, a human skull was added later. This means the pit was opened and used many times. In another place, a household stove was converted into a grave for 2 people. The bones show traces of cremation before or during burial. Why the dogs? In ancient beliefs, they were guides to the other world, so their presence next to human remains is logical for a transition ritual. The arrangement of objects and bones is orderly. These are not spontaneous burials, but structured scenarios involving fire, dismantling of buildings, and partial reburials. The context of the time is important. The Neolithic period ended amid climate instability and pressure from neighboring communities. Crop failures and competition for land could have increased the need for ceremonies dedicated to ancestors and the household fire. That's why ovens and parts of houses became part of rituals as symbols of the community's life. DNA and isotopes will help determine whether these people were locals, where the dogs came from, and whether they were companions of a single family or brought from different settlements. The oldest finger in human history. According to the theory of evolution, humans descended from apes, meaning that for millions of years, apes sat on branches and ate bananas. Then they decided to come down, made primitive weapons from sticks and stones, lost their tails, and became intelligent. Sounds like a fairy tale, doesn't it? A logical question. When did the first apes appear? About 50 to 55 million years ago. However, thank God there is such a science as archaeology. In the mid-1980s, an unusual discovery was made in the United States, a fossilized finger. Its appearance was incredibly similar to an ordinary human finger. You could see the joints, a distinct fingernail, and most amazing of all, the size was identical to that of a modern human. However, the artifact was found in deposits where dinosaur bones were also discovered nearby. At first, the scientific community did not take this discovery seriously. They thought the stone just resembled a finger and had no scientific value. However, more than 20 years later, the find was examined using modern equipment, and they were astonished. Inside the finger, there were fossilized tendons and bones. Their different densities on the X-ray confirmed this fact. By all parameters, this find was a human finger, or at the very least an ape's finger, about 100 million years old. Long searches for a logical explanation led nowhere, and the scientific community declared this find inexplicable. It does not fit into the modern understanding of evolution on Earth. 100 million years ago, there couldn't have been not only humans, but even apes. Either our understanding of evolution's laws is flawed, or our dating of historical periods is incorrect. This artifact is vivid proof that humanity still has yet to learn the history of its appearance on Earth. The rice gold. One of the sunken ships in Austria's Lake Toplitz hid its secret for decades. The depth, murky water, and dangerous currents made it a perfect hiding place. Rumors had long circulated about crates of gold, documents, and stolen art at the bottom. Recently, there was a new reason to take them seriously. Researchers discovered a sealed safe. According to various estimates, it could contain up to 4 tons of gold. At first, I thought it was just another legend, but then photos, footage, and documents appeared, including some from CIA archives. Their data shows the ship carried special cargo that absolutely couldn't fall into Allied hands. This isn't just wealth, it's a backup plan, a resource for escape, for recovery, for continuing in the shadows. We're talking about the legacy of the Reich in technology, in ideas, in people, but every legacy also has a material part, heavy, valuable, dangerous. Its concealment in lakes, mines, and glaciers shows its immense scale. These weren't randomly hidden chests. This was a system. The 2,500-year-old sword of Goujon. Even though this remarkable sword was made about 2,500 years ago, it is still as sharp as the day it was made, and it shows no signs of rust or tarnish from age. Goujon was a ruler of the ancient Chinese-Vietnamese kingdom of Yue, reigning from 496 to 465 before Christ. Chinese sources emphasize that his appearance had barbarian features, a tattooed body, and short-cropped hair. The sword of Goujon was discovered in 1965 when more than 50 tombs of the Chu kingdom were excavated in Hubei province. Among other findings, a straight sword was discovered bearing the inscription, Yue Wang Gujian made this sword for his own use. The straight sword is forged from bronze with a high copper content and low amounts of iron and lead. The edges are made of tin. The blade is decorated with an engraving in the form of a symmetrical, repeating pattern of black diamonds. The sword is 55.7 centimeters long, the blade is 4.6 centimeters wide, and the weapon weighs 875 grams. The sword is currently kept in the Hubei Provincial Museum. Experts were quite surprised at the time, not finding the slightest trace of rust on the blade, and it was still very sharp. It's said that when the archaeologist unearthed it and tested the tip with his finger, he was cut. Ancient experiments showed that the sword was so sharp it could cut through a stack of 20 sheets of paper. Some researchers believe that in terms of significance and mythology, Gujian's sword is no less important than King Arthur's Excalibur, but it was not the only one of its kind. 2,500 years ago, swords called jian with similar characteristics were very common. Centuries later, they turned from weapons of war into mainly ceremonial weapons. These swords are considered the oldest swords in China and are closely connected to their rich mythology. In Chinese folklore, this sword is called the gentleman of all swords and is considered one of the four main types of weapons, along with the staff, spear, and saber. However, the sword of Gujian definitely stands out among other swords of this type. Archaeologists explain its mysteriously preserved sharpness by the unique method of metal processing, and the high content of sulfur and copper sulfide allowed the sword to remain stainless. It is believed that for the same reason, the pattern on the sword has not faded and still looks magnificent. Dietrada from France. In France, employees of the National Institute for Preventive Archaeological Research presented finds made during excavations of an ancient necropolis in the city of Autun. The most curious artifact turned out to be a bowl that was used for religious rituals. Experts classified it as a dietreta. This is the name usually given to glass vessels, mostly bell-shaped with double walls and an open-work mesh between them. The vessel dates to the 4th century AD, and archaeologists found the necropolis was in use from the early 3rd to mid-5th century. Scientists note that the vessel was made very skillfully and features a complex ornamentation. Experts describe this item as a masterpiece of Roman glassmaking art. According to them, only a very experienced craftsman could have made such an item, and it would have taken him several months to complete the work. Experts also note that this item was very expensive and prestigious. Such a vessel could only have belonged to a member of the upper class. Scientists do not rule out that the owner of the artifact could have been a member of the royal family or someone very close to them. A flute with the voice of a hawk. Now let's go to Israel, to the site of the ancient settlement of Ain Malaha. Here, under a layer of earth more than 12,000 years old, 7 unique flutes made from thin bird bones were discovered. Imagine these instruments were made by our ancestors from the bones of predatory birds. Moreover, scientists are sure that the choice of bones and the placement of holes in them were not accidental. With their help, it is possible to produce sounds very similar to the cries of predatory birds. According to researchers, these flutes were not musical instruments, but were used for hunting. Ain Malaha is an ancient settlement of the Natufians, the first hunter-gatherers who decided to settle in this place, but at the same time did not give up hunting, fishing, and gathering fruits and plants, and even learned to practice agriculture and animal husbandry. Ain Malaha is located near Lake Hula, where migratory birds stop to rest. Based on the findings, the local inhabitants actively hunted waterfowl that wintered on the lake. These flutes had from 1 to 4 holes, which, just like in modern flutes, were covered with fingers. Some even had a mouthpiece, and around the holes there were many scratches and marks, proving that the instruments were actively used. Researchers conducted an experiment and made similar flutes from duck bones. The sounds they produced turned out to be very similar to the cries of birds of prey, kestrels, and sparrowhawks. It is assumed that hunters used these sounds to attract birds and then used their claws and feathers for decorations. Lakes beneath the ice. More than 400 subglacial lakes have already been found in Antarctica, and each of them has been isolated from the rest of the world and the atmosphere for millions of years. And that means that life there could be completely unique and ancient. Scientists have already drilled into 2 small lakes and discovered microbial life. But what happens in the larger lakes remains a mystery, since there is no sunlight there, so microbes cannot use photosynthesis. For life to be more diverse, the water in the lake needs to move so that nutrients and oxygen are evenly distributed. On the Earth's surface, this is done by wind and the sun. Under the ice, the source of heat and movement could be geothermal heat rising from the Earth's interior. This heat is capable of creating currents in subglacial lakes, mixing the water and making it more hospitable for life. There was a mistake. When Polish archaeologists began working on studying this ancient Egyptian mummy, they thought they were dealing with the mummified body of some priest. Why they thought so? I don't know. And the media that published this story are keeping quiet about it. Imagine the scientists' surprise when they realized that it wasn't a priest at all, not even a man, but actually a woman who was 7 months pregnant. Scientists had never found a pregnant mummy before, so this discovery turned out to be unique. The mummy was very well prepared and excellently mummified, which indirectly suggests the high status of the deceased woman in society or the wealth of her family, or perhaps her own. The meticulous care with which her body was preserved for eternity makes archaeologists question the original dating, because its condition resembles that of the 1st century AD, but it could be much older, just very well preserved. The mummy ended up in Warsaw as early as 1826. The inscription on the sarcophagus claimed that it belonged to a male priest, but modern studies of the mummy showed that this turned out to be false. The mummy lacked male organs but had breasts and long hair, and later pregnancy was also discovered. In the images, scientists were amazed to first see a tiny foot and then a hand. There could be no more doubt the child was 26 to 28 weeks old, and the woman was between 20 and 30 years old. Scientists now hope to find out whether pregnancy complications were the cause of death for the mother and her unborn baby, or perhaps even discover traces of attempts by ancient doctors to treat the emerging pathology. The mummy at the top of the pyramid. In Peru, archaeologists have discovered a mummy that is about 1,000 years old. Researchers believe that the mummy belongs to the pre-Inca Ishma culture. The mummy was buried in a simple round grave at the top of a pyramid located in the very center of a residential area of the capital of Peru, Lima. Huaxapuclana is a monumental clay pyramid over 20 meters high, located in the Miraflores district. This structure, consisting of 7 stepped platforms, was built by the Lima culture, which developed on the central coast of Peru between the years 200 and 700 AD. This site served as an important religious center for the ancient inhabitants. Ritual ceremonies were probably held at the site. 3 distinct stages of settlement before the arrival of the Spanish have been identified at the Huaxapuclana site. The first was the Lima culture, followed by the WWII and Ishma cultures. The Ishma culture, which developed around the year 1000 AD, used the pyramid as a burial site until it was assimilated by the Incas in the 15th century. A fingerprint from the past. During the Temple Mount sifting project in Jerusalem, archaeologists washed soil that had been removed from the slope of the Temple Mount. Among the grains of earth, a tiny clay bulla appeared. This is a seal used in ancient times to close bags or vessels. Its diameter is 13 millimeters. On one side, the inscription is clearly legible, belonging to Yediah, son of Osayahu. The style of writing and carbon testing date the artifact to the end of the 7th or the beginning of the 6th century before Common Era, that is, the era of the First Temple. The name Osayahu is mentioned in the Bible. If this is the same person, the seal might have been his son's. This suggests a high-ranking official's family could also be involved in official affairs. On the reverse side, the fingerprint of the owner has been preserved, a rare personal code of an ancient official. The surface was analyzed using reflectance transformation imaging, multiple lighting angles. Then a 3D model was created to capture the relief of the inscription. The find is important because it transfers the biblical name from text to the material layer and confirms the existence of the administrative system of Judea on the eve of the Babylonian destruction of the temple. A unique gold ring in Israel. Israeli archaeologists, during excavations at the site of the world's largest ancient winery in Yavne, discovered a gold ring with an amethyst. Dr. Amir Galani, an expert in ancient jewelry, suggests that the ring most likely belonged to a noble and influential person, since such jewelry always indicated the high status and wealth of its owner. What is of particular interest to scientists is not the gold ring itself, but rather the amethyst inlays, which are quite rare in such ancient jewelry. Amethyst is mentioned in the Bible as one of the 12 stones on the breastplate of the high priest. In ancient times, many legends were associated with this precious stone. It was also credited with many healing properties. For example, it was believed that amethyst was excellent at curing hangovers, which is ironic since the jewelry was found on the site of a giant Byzantine winery. Gold rings with amethyst were quite common in the Roman world, so the ring could very well have been passed down as an heirloom from a wealthy person who lived in Yavne as early as the 3rd century AD. The jewelry has now been sent for additional examinations, where experts will try to determine its age more precisely. By the way, along with the ring, archaeologists also discovered other artifacts that are about 1,500 years old. Princess Ida's dagger. In Dashur, in the tomb of Pharaoh Amenhotep II's daughter, Princess Ida, a dagger was found, along with a collection of precious stones, a necklace, bracelets, anklets, and the remains of a belt. The dagger itself is shaped like a Phoenician dagger, but the patterns on the handle resemble those commonly found in Crete. The blade is made of bronze, and the pommel of the handle is crescent-shaped and made of lapis lazuli. The handle is made of hammered gold and inlaid with lapis lazuli, carnelian, and green feldspar. The discs are inlaid with gold crosses, and between them are diamonds, which in turn are inlaid with light brown carnelian. The blade is mounted into a gold shoulder and secured with 3 gold rivets. The overall appearance of the dagger suggests that it was either imported into Egypt or made in Egypt itself by a foreign court craftsman working at the palace. The era of the Middle Kingdom was full of bloody conspiracies and brutal intrigues. Sometimes pharaohs could not even rely on their own guards, made up of their closest nobles. Even beautiful princesses kept personal weapons at the ready. Tutankhamun was not disabled. Today on our agenda is one of the most mysterious pharaohs of ancient Egypt, Tutankhamun. Many of you have probably heard that Tutankhamun was a weak and sickly boy who had difficulty moving around because of bone disease. But recent research and the reconstruction of his face have led us to a startling discovery. This might not be the case at all. When archaeologists opened Tutankhamun's tomb, they found 130 staffs, which they assumed helped him move around. But Egyptologists at the Cheltenham Science Festival now claim that this might have been a wrong assumption. Imagine the so-called clubfoot could have been the result of the mummification process itself. What we thought were signs of weakness could actually have been distortions caused by resin and tight bandaging. Sophia Aziz, a mummy researcher, is convinced that there is actually no evidence that Tutankhamun was disabled. The canes that were found with him could have simply been a symbol of his royal authority. And although Tutankhamun's mummy is missing 1 toe on the left foot, scientists suggest that it could have been lost during the process of moving the body or even taken as a souvenir. And those canes that were found with him were not aids for walking, but symbols of status. His enemies are depicted on them, which gives us reason to believe that Tutankhamun was not a weakling, but a battle-hardened warrior. Since the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, scientists have continued to study its contents, and each time they make new and new discoveries. Today we know that Tutankhamun ascended the throne in 1336 before Christ, when he was only 9 years old and died at 19. But he was not just a pharaoh, he was a warrior. Armor made of leather and weapons were found in his tomb, which confirms this fact. And how many more such discoveries await us? We can only guess. More and more often, archaeologists are re-examining the same find, and it turns out that previous conclusions were completely false. Before this time, many movies and cartoons were made in which Tutankhamun was depicted as disabled. Should we trust archaeologists after that? Write your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. Artifacts in the tomb. When I first saw this find, I had the feeling that someone had deliberately planted the artifacts there. It looked so unbelievable. A World War II burial in Poland. in the Tukola forest. Everything was standard. Remains of German uniforms, equipment, a dog tag, but next to the body were Mesolithic stone tools, Neolithic pottery, and Roman coins. They were real, verified, not fake. I spent a long time trying to understand how this is officially explained. There's only one explanation. They say it's just a coincidence. It just so happened that ancient tribes once lived in that spot, and the soldier died right there. Yeah, right, a coincidence. Just like how Nazi archaeological intelligence has been interested in this place since the war began. They were obsessed with ancient civilizations. It wasn't just an interest, it was a real mania. The Ahnenerbe sent expeditions to Tibet, Iran, Africa, and in Europe they were actively searching for proof of their theory that the Aryans were not just a people, but the heirs of an ancient world empire. And here, in this grave, there's an SS officer and objects that are 2,000 years old. I can't shake the thought, what if this isn't a coincidence? What if he was actually part of some program for testing, transporting artifacts, or even guarding them? The Nazis attached ritual significance to objects from the past. They believed that ancient artifacts were keys, not to history, but to power. Maybe that soldier didn't die by accident. Maybe he died because of what he was guarding, a triangular shield. 20 kilometers southeast of Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria, archaeologists have excavated a rare Roman watchtower. Its base is an equilateral triangle with sides about 7 meters long. Dating by coins of Emperor Caracalla places it at the end of the 2nd century AD. This is unusual for the Roman Empire. Most outposts were square or circular. The question arises, why a triangle? The tower's narrow tip faces the slope, so battering rams or stones slide along the wall instead of destroying the masonry. Inside, they found a stone well and remains of a wooden floor rebuilt during the Byzantine period and the Second Bulgarian Empire in the 12th century. Similar shapes are found only on the border with watchtowers. The Romans called such borderlines limes, meaning the entire system of ramparts, roads, and fortresses along the border. In Bulgaria, this is the earliest example of irregular planning. Instead of a standard template, the engineers chose a layout that fit the mountainous terrain more precisely. Today, the tower is part of the Urvich Museum complex. It shows that Roman builders were able to deviate from standards when local conditions required it. The oldest fossilized remains of a fish. Chinese paleontologists made an amazing discovery in Yunnan province. The fossils of 3 predatory fish from the genus Peltoperleidus. This is a fossil genus of fish that lived during the Middle Triassic period. Scientists estimated the age of the find at 244 million years. This is the oldest bony fish fossil ever discovered. Previously, fossil remains of such fish were found only in Europe, in southern Switzerland and northern Italy, but they are dated 2 million years later. Each of the discovered specimens has tiny but sharp teeth, impressive scales, and a blunt-shaped snout. The lower jaw of this prehistoric fish was suspended directly under the skull, so the mouth could open very wide. This allowed it to catch larger prey. Peltoperleidus fish were small durophagous predators. They fed on exoskeletal organisms and hard-shelled creatures, such as mollusks, crustaceans, and corals. The teeth of these fish were designed both for grabbing and for crushing hard shells, which is why they look quite unusual. Tin mines. The discovery of bronze is considered a significant achievement in metalworking. Very few metals are valuable on their own. In their natural form, examples include gold and silver. Bronze, on the other hand, is an alloy of copper and tin, and as a material for tools and weapons, it was better suited than anything else for a certain period of time. Unfortunately, tin is quite rare in Europe. However, people have long known a powerful tool for interaction and obtaining what they needed, trade. Thus, the Greeks imported tin from one of the few deposits in Cornwall located in England. Archaeological research of these mines has shown that they were used for several thousand years. Findings of bronze items containing this tin have been discovered on the Mediterranean coast. This shows that even back then, people were less isolated than we often assume. The Florentine diamond. This sparkling stone is the legendary Florentine diamond, also known as the Austrian yellow. It weighed 137.45 carats, and it impressed not only with its size, but also with its unusual yellowish hue. According to legend, the diamond first belonged to the influential Medici family, and then ended up in the hands of the Habsburg dynasty, where it became part of the imperial regalia. For a long time, the Florentine was kept in the royal treasury in Vienna and was considered one of the most valuable stones in Europe. However, after the collapse of Austria-Hungary in 1918, its traces were lost. The stone was allegedly taken to South America, and according to rumors, was later split into several smaller diamonds to make it easier to sell and to hide its origin. To this day, it is unknown where the pieces of the Florentine are, if it was indeed divided. Its history is shrouded in secrets and mysteries, and the diamond itself has become a symbol of the lost splendor of European dynasties. Perhaps it still lies in some private safe today, waiting for its new appearance. Armor made from fish scales. Today we have an exciting journey to China, where 2,500 years ago, a brave warrior was buried in amazing armor. Imagine archaeologists excavating deep in the Taklamakan Desert in China. They come across a tomb, inside which lies a warrior in armor made up of more than 5,000 overlapping leather scales. This suit was so comfortable and practical that the warrior could have put it on himself, like an apron before dinner. Except here, the dinner was a battle. This armor is unusual for its time and place. Researchers believe it was brought from the Middle East, where this style of armor first appeared. The warrior who wore this armor was a man about 30 years old. Next to him, they found shards of pots, parts of a horse bridle made of horn and wood, and a sheep's skull. Such scale armor provided better protection against blows and stabs than chainmail and was cheaper to produce, but it was less flexible and did not cover as much of the body as chainmail. Warriors from many cultures wore such armor and even decorated their horses with it. The materials used for the scales were diverse, from bronze and iron to pangolin scales and even paper. It's very difficult to find such old armor like this because very few of them have survived to this day. Only the armor from Pharaoh Tutankhamun's tomb and the armor of the Scythians are comparable in age to this find. Scientists from the University of Zurich, led by Patrick Wertmann, counted and found that the armor had 5,444 small and 140 large scales, all made from cowhide. This type of armor was unusual for China at that time. This style was common among the Persians and Scythians, and even some Greeks wore such armor, although they preferred other styles. The owner of the armor could have been either an ordinary infantryman or a horseman, but the presence of a horse bridle suggests that he was most likely a horseman. He could have been a local who bought the armor in the West, or a foreign soldier who came to fight in China wearing Assyrian equipment. We can only guess, but one thing is certain: this story is fascinating. Write in the comments what you think. Was it an ancient Chinese or a traveler from distant lands? And also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. The Trail of the Amber Room. I've heard about the Amber Room since I was a child. It's the most mysterious loss of World War II taken away, hidden, dissolved somewhere between the fronts. There are dozens of theories. Almost no traces remain, but last year, news appeared that made everyone reconsider everything. Polish historians announced that they had found a new lead, archives, testimonies, old routes for transporting valuables. And everything points to one thing. The Amber Room could have been transported deeper into Polish territory, possibly to one of the castles, into a tunnel, or into a mine. It hasn't been established for sure, but the fact is that the trail, which was long considered dead, has resurfaced again. What caught my attention wasn't even that, but the reaction, as if someone really didn't want this topic to come up again. There were attempts to hush it up, dispute it, push it aside, and the more I think about it, the clearer I understand. The Amber Room is not just a lost artifact, it's a marker, a signal that much more disappeared in that war than we are used to thinking, and some things still haven't been found. An amethyst seal with the scent of Cleopatra. A rare amethyst seal of lilac color was discovered during excavations conducted by the Israel Antiquities Authority. It is decorated with an image of a biblical tree, whose fruits, according to legend, were used to make balm and perfumes for Queen Cleopatra. According to experts, the seal, which features an image of a bird next to a branch laden with fruit, bears the earliest known depiction of the plant used for incense in the Second Temple and for perfumes made for Queen Cleopatra, namely the biblical balsam. The seal, which was designed to be worn as a ring, is estimated to be about 2,000 years old. However, the dating of the seal is not yet final. But the use of precious and semi-precious stones, not only in jewelry, but also in seals, was relatively common at the end of the Second Temple period. This is also proven by the location where the artifact was found. According to the professor, the owner of the ring was probably a wealthy person, since the plant was grown, prepared, and sold to Jews living in the Dead Sea Basin, which is located less than 20 kilometers east of Jerusalem. This led the archaeologist to suggest that the owner of the ring might have owned a persimmon orchard. Perhaps he even brought a sprig of persimmon to the craftsman who carved the image, so that he would know exactly what to depict. Israeli scientists consider the find very important and valuable, as it is the first time they have seen an image of the precious and famous plant, which until now they could only read about in historical descriptions. Cotton that is 7,000 years old. I often point out to you that the development of modern digital technologies greatly helps archaeologists to see things that were previously impossible. It's a pity that by this time many archaeological finds have already disappeared without a trace. However, scientists can study the finds that remain in more detail. For example, Israeli archaeologists have discovered the oldest traces of cotton in the Middle East. They claim that the textile items that lay in the ground are 7,000 years old. Of course, after such a long time, nothing remains of the items themselves, only tiny particles, which is what the scientists base their conclusions on. The discovery was made at the archaeological site of Tel Saf, which is located in the central Jordan Valley. In addition to the microscopic remains of cotton, many important discoveries have been made here. For example, the earliest known evidence of communal beer drinking comes from this place. In simple terms, one of the first beer bars appeared here, and the technology of ritual food storage also originated from this place. Previously, microscopic remains of clothing made from linen, hair, and wool were found at this site, but cotton was not native to this region. This can mean only one thing. Tel Saf was an important trading center in ancient times, and in Egypt, archaeologists have found an equally important royal tomb. Mummified penguins. Researchers from China discovered a cemetery of mummified penguins in Antarctica, and many of them were just chicks. At first, scientists thought that the penguins did not survive 2 periods of extreme precipitation, but penguins live in Antarctica and are used to the cold and snow, so something here doesn't quite add up. Now, scientists suggest that climate change is to blame for these mass deaths of penguins. In their opinion, the increased humidity caused by global warming could have led to this tragedy. As it turned out, the penguins were not prepared for such conditions and died immediately. This happened twice about 750 and 200 years ago. Scientists discovered this using radiocarbon dating, and it seems the penguins did not die immediately, but perished gradually. The mysterious steel sanatorium. In Cleveland, on the shore of Lake Erie, in 1928, a giant steel sphere about 20 meters high with 38 rooms inside began operating. The structure was built with funds from industrialist Henry Timken at the initiative of Dr. Furman Cunningham, an anesthesiologist who believed that increased pressure and an oxygen mixture could treat a wide range of diseases. The building had 5 floors with living rooms and bathrooms, as well as a powerful climate control system, 3 compressors, 2 boilers, an ammonia cooler weighing about 27 tons, and filters that allowed control of pressure, temperature, humidity, and circulation. Cunningham's method was based on the mistaken assumption that many diseases are caused by anaerobic bacteria and can be treated with oxygen therapy under pressure. In the very year it opened, the Bureau of Investigation of the American Medical Association characterized the project as commercial rather than scientific. In 1934, James Rand Jr. bought the facility and renamed it the Guy Oxygen Therapy Institute, but a steady flow of patients never developed. 2 years later, the complex was resold and attempts to use it as a regular clinic failed. By 1942, the steel sphere was dismantled for metal to meet the needs of the war industry. Cunningham's ideas were not confirmed regarding cancer, diabetes, and universal healing, but hyperbaric oxygenation found limited medical use for decompression sickness, carbon monoxide poisoning, and some tissue healing problems. This no longer has anything to do with the steel sanatorium itself. A royal tomb in Egypt. Luxor is one of the oldest cities in the world. To this day, scholars disagree on when it was built. The ancient Egyptians called the city Waset, which means scepter. The Greeks called it Thebes, and the Romans called it Diospolis Magna. When the Arabs conquered Egypt, the city received its last name, Luxor, which means the place of many palaces. When we hear about new discoveries from Egypt, we immediately understand that there's a 90% chance it will be either in Luxor or near this city. An international team of archaeologists found a tomb at the base of a small rock with a staircase carved into it, leading to the burial chamber. After thousands of years, the tomb was badly damaged and filled with sand, and even the inscriptions on the tomb walls were erased. Although those who watch my videos regularly know how the authorities in Egypt can hide parts of their country's history, that's why you shouldn't trust archaeologists 100% either. Scientists still don't know exactly who was buried in this tomb. The tomb needs to be cleared of sand, and in a few months, archaeologists will be able to say who was buried there. They are confident that a wife of the Pharaoh's child or a Thutmose dynasty princess was buried there. Based on the items that have been found, it can be concluded that the tomb belongs to the 18th dynasty of the Pharaohs Akhenaten and Tutankhamun. A mysterious creature in the Arctic. Now we are going on an amazing adventure into the very heart of the Arctic, a frozen desert that holds many secrets. And today, one of those secrets will be revealed to us a little. Meet the little monster. Although at first glance the word monster brings to mind images of giant frightening creatures, our hero is not like that. This monster is not monstrous in size, but in its uniqueness. Its size is surprisingly modest, but its uniqueness is what truly makes it a real monster. This super interesting little creature was discovered by the American geologist James Dwight Dana back in the 19th century, and he was so amazed that he named it Monstrilla. And here's the most amazing part. Modern scientists encountered the same kind of creature in 2014. Maybe you think it looks something like a shrimp. You're right, but its size is only a few millimeters. Our little monster has a flat head with antennae, 4 pairs of legs, and only one eye. And it also has a few more amazing features that make it even more unique. But what really amazed us was that this microcyclops was found not as a larva, but as an adult creature. You see, our little monster, despite its size, is important for the ecosystem of our planet. This flat-headed monster confirmed that the eternal ice of the Arctic hides thousands of secrets. And this icy desert is like a giant refrigerator, preserving all these secrets in perfect condition. The Sumerian myth about the trickster. An inconspicuous clay tablet, Ni 12501, from the city of Nishur, modern-day Iraq, lay in the storage of the British Museum. Its age is about 4,400 years, from the early dynastic Sumerian period. Recently, the Assyriologist Yana Matushak deciphered the text in the drawing, which is visible only under oblique light. This is a fragment of a myth where the main characters are the god ruler Enlil, his son, the god of thunder Ishkur, and the fox messenger. According to the plot, Ishkur ends up in the underworld. Rain disappears on earth and the harvest withers. Enlil calls a council of the gods, but no one wants to go down for the captive. The fox volunteers, a creature small but agile. In the drawing, he walks forward with his paws tied. This is a convention showing his willingness to take risks. The continuation on another tablet has not yet been found, but the surviving lines describe how the fox deceives the lords of the underworld, pretends to drink their wine, but actually hides in a jug, distracts the guards, and brings Ishkur out into the light. This story is one of the oldest examples of a trickster, a hero who uses cunning where strength is powerless. The tablet is important in 2 ways at once. It records the connection between climate fears and weather gods, and it shows that the image of the cunning fox already served as a lesson about the power of intelligence. Marble ornaments in Denisova Cave. Scientists say that these artifacts indicate the high cognitive development of the Denisovans. During the last field season, at a new archaeological excavation site in the southern gallery of Denisova Cave, scientists discovered objects of symbolic activity by ancient people, particularly those related to primitive art. The marble items are about 45,000 years old. The lower limit, determined by a series of radiocarbon datings, is about 50,000 years. The stoneworking techniques used to make these items began to be widely used in primitive society at other ancient human sites only later. This is probably the most representative ancient collection of such items in northern Eurasia, and here the bearer of these cultures was the Denisovan human. Denisova Cave is located in the Soloneshensky district of the Altai territory, on the right side of the Anui River Valley. It was there that fragments of the teeth of the cave's ancient inhabitants were first found, which were identified as belonging to the extinct Denisovan human, Homo denisovensis. The cave contains over 20 cultural layers from various eras and more than 80,000 artifacts, mostly housed at the Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography of the Siberian branch of the Russian Academy of Sciences. These include tools, weapons, ornaments, and remains of animals and plants. A mosaic of a skull in an ordinary house. In a house on one of the streets of ancient Pompeii, archaeologists found a mosaic tile. It wasn't large, only about 40 centimeters, but its meaning turned out to be much greater. In the center, there is a depiction of a human skull, above it, a scale, and on the sides, symbols of power and poverty. Everything is done with the finest detail. At first glance, it seems like just a philosophical allegory, but the meaning is much deeper. This mosaic decorated the wall in the dining room, where the owner received guests. Right there, where they ate, drank, and discussed business, he reminded everyone that in death all are equal. The skull symbolized mortality, the scales represented the balance of fate, and the butterfly above them, the soul, freed after death. According to the inscription at the entrance, the owner's name was Visoni Primus, a tanner and textile craftsman. An ordinary man, not a senator or a general, but he commissioned an image that usually adorned philosophical salons or public buildings. Apparently, he wanted to remind himself and others that wealth and poverty are erased equally. The mosaic lay under ash for almost 2,000 years. When it was found, the colors were preserved as if the work had just been completed. Today, it is kept in the Naples Museum. Subway construction. The construction of the metro in Thessaloniki began in 2006. The ancient headless statue of Aphrodite was found by metro builders in the city of Thessaloniki. The latest of 300,000 finds, it may be one of the most stunning results of the archaeological excavations in the Thessaloniki metro. Greek archaeologists carried out excavations at the construction site where work is being done to expand the existing metro line. They found remains of an ancient aqueduct and thousands of artifacts from the Hellenistic and Roman periods. The archaeologists discovered an ancient aqueduct, underground wells, and a luxurious stone floor from the Hellenistic period. Copies and images of all these objects will be combined into an exhibition that will be installed at the Municipal Theater Metro Station in Piraeus. Currently, this station is still under construction. The exhibition will also include some of the artifacts that archaeologists managed to excavate. It is reported that there are thousands of them, so not all the items will fit in the metro station. They belong to both the Hellenistic and Roman periods. Subway construction in Greece's northern capital started 12 years ago, but has been slow because of numerous historical discoveries along the route. Workers discovered ancient artifacts in former city canals while building a new subway line in Amsterdam. The finds are very diverse, from Stone Age tools to modern jewelry and the remains of drowned animals. They have been preserved for almost 800 years. The Damrak and Rokin canals, once branches of the Amstel River, were filled in during the 1800s and became streets in modern Amsterdam. In 2003, construction began here on a new city metro line, and workers came across 700,000 objects. The artifacts belong to completely different eras and even cultures. Ceramic blades, medieval nails, coins, hooks, a Russian tack stove, and a suba, the guard of a 19th century Japanese samurai sword. All the items reflect different stages of the city's construction and tell the story of how the shipping routes changed. During the construction of the metro in Rome, they managed to discover the house of an ancient Roman military commander, dated to the 2nd century AD. The 2nd century villa has 14 rooms with a total area of about 300 square meters. The fountain in the inner courtyard, the ancient frescoes and mosaics, as well as the marble floor, have been well preserved. The floor finish has survived, black and white mosaic with floral motifs. The walls are finished with marble tiles and decorated with frescoes. Archaeologists even managed to find the remains of a fountain that once decorated the atrium. Workers discovered this house at a depth of 12 meters, not far from the ruins of ancient Roman barracks. Scientists suggested that it might have belonged to one of Emperor Hadrian's generals. In Turkey, during the construction of the subway, a real city had been hidden underground for many years. There are many such underground complexes in Turkey, but Derinkuyu is the largest of them. The shelter consists of 8 levels and goes down to a depth of 80 meters. The cave kingdom was built around the 8th century before Christ. Its first inhabitants were the ancient Phrygians and later early Christians who hid here from persecution. However, the original purpose of the underground structure still remains unknown. The archaeologists were mistaken. Get ready for an amazing historical journey. Have you ever wondered who stands on the giant statues of ancient Egypt? Here's a story that will definitely amaze you. Back in 2017, archaeologists in Cairo discovered a colossal 8-meter statue. Everyone thought it was a statue of the famous pharaoh Ramses II. However, scientists have recently concluded that this was a mistake. This majestic statue was found in the former ancient city of Heliopolis, which is now a district of Cairo. Archaeologists worked long and hard to extract the parts of the statue from the mud. This 3,000-year-old work of art was attributed to Ramses II, but scientists discovered that they were mistaken. Who is actually depicted on the statue? Meet Psamtik I, pharaoh of the 26th dynasty. Scientists solved this mystery by reading the inscription of Neb on the statue. This was the nickname of Psamtik I, who ruled Egypt from 664 to 610 before Christ and made Egypt an independent state again. The Egyptian Minister of Antiquities called this statue one of the most important archaeological discoveries, and after restoration it will take a place of honor at the entrance to the Grand Egyptian Museum, which will open at the end of 2023. This is the incredible story of one of Egypt's most majestic statues. But remember, history is full of secrets and unpredictable twists. Unidentified flying object sighting. In 1965, at the Argentine naval base in Antarctica, almost 20 people were watching the sky in amazement in the middle of the night. At an altitude of 15 to 20 kilometers, they saw an unidentified flying object. This mysterious object was a glowing kaleidoscope of green, red, yellow, orange, and white shades. The huge craft, more than 85 meters long, seemed heavy and hovered confidently in the sky. There were many witnesses to this event, since it lasted for quite a while. Even earlier, in 1946, the American expedition High Jump set out for the icy shores. There is a legend that on the way they encountered flying saucers, and it is said that about 400 sailors and military personnel died in battles with them. The entire expedition ended after 3 months, and all the materials became strictly classified. Richard Byrd, the head of the expedition, talked about this and ended up in a psychiatric hospital. The sculpture of Atlas. The impressive find in Chichen Itza enhances our understanding of the extensive cultural connections between the ancient civilizations of Mexico. The discovered Atlas likely played an important role in religious or cultural ceremonies, and its detailed carving speaks to the high level of skill of ancient craftsmen. The fact that the culture was discovered during construction in a modern area is a reminder of how deeply the roots of history reach into the earth, even beneath places that seemed long forgotten or lost. The Atlas from Chichen Itza will become yet another testament to the glorious, multifaceted history of the ancient Mexican civilizations. Pyramids at the bottom of the Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle is a well-known and extremely mysterious place on our planet. In the center of the Bermuda Triangle, at a depth of several thousand meters, there are crystal pyramids of unknown origin. Dr. Verloc Meyer proved their existence in 2012 thanks to sonar, which he used to study the mysterious place. The oceanologist insists that further study of the pyramids will help shed light on the anomalous phenomena in this area related to the disappearance of ships and airplanes. In the 1960s, the scientist Ray Brown was the first to talk about a mysterious discovery in the Bahamas. While on vacation, the man often went diving. During another dive, Brown discovered a massive pyramid-shaped structure on the ocean floor. Dr. Brown ran out of oxygen before he could study the mysterious find more thoroughly. But to back up his story, he managed to retrieve an unusual crystal sphere about 10 centimeters in diameter. However, despite the evidence provided by Brown, his story was never believed. Some time passed before the previously mentioned Verloc Meyer, using modern equipment, was able to prove the existence of not one, but two giant pyramids at the bottom of the Bermuda Triangle, made of a material resembling thick and durable glass. Soon, independent diving teams from different parts of the world, after conducting their own research of the area, were able to confirm the sensational report. After processing all the available data, scientists stated that the structures found on the ocean floor are several times larger than the Pyramid of Khufu in Egypt. It was not only the size of the structure that was unusual, but also its surface, which was made of a smooth, slippery material resembling crystal or ice. When the scientists studied the mysterious object in detail, they discovered two large holes at the top of the pyramids, through which water circulates at an incredible speed. Some foreign scientists believe that the crystal pyramids were originally built on the mainland. But due to a global earthquake that changed the entire landscape of the planet, these amazing objects sank to the bottom of the ocean. Other researchers claim that the area known as the Bermuda Triangle was once part of Atlantis, and the pyramid structures could have served as a source of energy for the local inhabitants. In trying to solve the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle, people around the world are asking themselves, could the crystal pyramids resting on the ocean floor be the cause of the mysterious disappearances in this anomalous zone? Back in the 1880s, the Curie brothers proved that crystals possess natural piezoelectric properties. Therefore, the anomalous phenomena occurring in these places may be caused by the pyramids, which emit enormous energy and create deadly whirlpools and mists on the surface of the water, capable of swallowing multi-ton ships and the people on their decks. Research expedition groups, upon closer examination in the future, will be able to determine the significance of the crystal pyramids and unravel the mystery of their origin. However, deep-sea archaeology is very expensive and difficult to fund, especially if it involves crystal pyramids rather than sunken treasures of immediate value. A tower made of stone. In Barramini, Sardinia, a strange structure rises, a 3-story tower made of huge stone blocks, without cement, without arches, without metal, everything held together by weight and precision. This is Sunaraxi, the heart of the ancient Nuragic culture that lived here more than 3,000 years ago. The tower is surrounded by a ring of smaller towers connected by walls, and inside there is a well carved directly into the rock. Its depth is 15 meters, and there is still water in it today. Scientists believe that Nuragis served as a fortress, a symbol of power and possibly a place for rituals at the same time. The unique feature of Sunaraxi is that it has been preserved almost completely. You can climb the stairs, walk through the inner corridors, and see how people of the Bronze Age built. Each slab weighs several tons, but they are laid so precisely that you can't fit a knife blade between them. Excavations have shown that this place was used for centuries, first as a fortification, then as a settlement, later as a storage area, and even as a burial site. In the 20th century, archaeologist Giovanni Liliu excavated the complex and proved that it was not just a single tower, but an entire city made of stone. The Nuraga are a reminder that Bronze Age Europe was not a dark era. People here knew how to design, build, and create monuments that have stood for millennia. Ruins of ancient civilizations. Captain Robert Scott and his team came face to face with an ancient civilization beyond the icy wall of Antarctica. They found traces of a pre-flood era and even captured them on camera. Can you imagine what it's like to see the ruins of an ancient city, pyramids, columns, and statues right in the heart of Antarctica? This ancient civilization might even be older than the ones we learn about in school. The proof of this is a map from 1531 where Antarctica is shown without ice. It's strange because, according to our history, Antarctica was only discovered in 1820 by Russian explorers. Did you know that the North and South Poles have switched places 171 times over the last 76 million years? And the last time this happened was about 12,000 years ago? This explains why all the secrets of Antarctica are now hidden under a kilometer-thick layer of ice. According to recent reports, there is a vast network of passages and tunnels under Antarctica at a depth of 4 kilometers. Books bound in human skin. In the 19th century, there was a rare but real practice in Europe and the United States Books were bound in human skin. Experts call this anthropodermic bibliophagy, which literally means a book bound in human. Most often, the skin was taken from executed criminals or patients of anatomical theaters. The year is 1837, Boston, United States of America. The bandit James Allen bequeathed that after his death, his skin should be removed and used to bind his own memoirs. On the cover, it is written in Latin. This book is made from Allen's skin. The year is 1830, Devon, England. The rat catcher George Cadmore poisoned his wife. After his execution, his skin was used to bind a collection of poetry by John Milton. The year is 1982, France. A countess who died of tuberculosis bequeathed her skin to her fan, the astronomer Camille Flammarion, to use for the first copy of his book Terre du Ciel. And now, let's talk about entire collections. The Harvard Library in the United States holds at least 3 volumes, bound in this way. One 17th century treatise contains a note about Jonas Reit, whose skin was removed on August 4, 1632. The John Hay Library in London confirms the existence of a medical atlas by Vesalius with a brown human cover. The motives were different: remembrance of a crime, rare souvenirs, scientific interest. Legally, this was in a gray area. The bodies of criminals were often given to surgical schools, and the leftovers were used for leather. These bindings are not put on display, but they are not destroyed either. Institutions consider them historical artifacts, showing just how far people could go in the search for a unique edition. I was afraid to touch it. Imagine going through your family's old belongings and suddenly finding a book that was checked out from the library back in 1927. That's exactly what happened to Jim Perry from California when he opened a box of his late wife's things. Among all that stuff, Jim found a book called The History of the United States, written by Benson Lossing. The book looked old, but when he saw the St. Helena Library stamps and the checkout date, 1927, he was amazed. He thought that his father-in-law, John McCormick, had borrowed the book and never returned it. 96 years had passed since then. According to the old library rules, the late fee was only 5 cents a day, but over that time, the amount had grown to an astronomical $1,756. But don't worry, in 2019, the library canceled late fees, so Jim didn't have to pay anything. Instead, he returned the book to the library, where it can now be seen in a glass case at the entrance. Chris Crichton, the library director who has worked there for more than 30 years, said that this is the oldest book she has ever seen. "I was afraid to touch it," she admitted. According to her, the book was falling apart. History is literally all around us. Next time you're going through old things, take a closer look. Who knows what you might find? A terracotta bottle or a rattle? In 2013, archaeologists in Italy discovered a 2,400-year-old terracotta baby bottle that also served as a toy shaped like a pig. The unique artifact is a rare item ever found in Manduria. The relic, known as a gutus, is a vessel with a narrow neck or spout used for pouring liquids. They were used for wine and other beverages, but in this case, the gutus was used for feeding an infant or a small child. What makes this gutus unique is that it was also shaped like a pig with pointed ears and human eyes. There were also terracotta rattles inside its belly. The vessel dates back to around 2400, when the southeastern part of Italy was inhabited by the Messapians, a tribal group that migrated from Illyria around 1000 before Christ. The Messapians disappeared after the Roman Republic conquered the region and assimilated its inhabitants. Pyramids. A group of researchers discovered nothing less than 3 pyramids in Antarctica, and it seems that they were not created by nature, but by the hands of our distant ancestors. Antarctica is now the edge of the world, at least covered in ice, but once it was an oasis full of life where even dinosaurs roamed. And our findings there are proof of that. A total of 8 researchers from America and Europe went on the expedition. They discovered 2 pyramids 16 kilometers from the shore, and the third one right by the water. The question arises, why don't we hear about this in the news? Many claim that this information is being hidden so as not to distract us from our usual understanding of the past. And what will we see when the glaciers melt? Is it possible that, besides the pyramids, another sphinx is hidden under the ice? What do you think about this? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. A 2,500-year-old helmet and Dacian treasures. This golden helmet is one of the most famous artifacts of Dacian culture, dating back to around 450 before Christ. It is known as the Helmet of Khotsufenesht and is considered not only a work of ancient jewelry art, but also a symbol of power and ritual strength. Adorned with eyes, snakes, and mythological scenes, it may have belonged to a priest or a leader who played a sacred role in Dacian society. The helmet seems to gaze at enemies, instilling fear and protecting its owner. On January 25, 2025, this helmet became the victim of a daring robbery. Several unique exhibits were stolen from the Drenthe Wassen Museum in the Netherlands, where the exhibition Dacia, Land of Gold and Silver, was being held, including this helmet and 3 royal Dacian bracelets. All the items came from the National History Museum of Romania. The loss of these artifacts was a real blow to cultural heritage. An archaeological sensation from Morocco. An international group of archaeologists working in Morocco managed to discover the world's oldest piece of jewelry. We're talking about beads made from shells. According to scientists, the find is at least 142,000 years old, and possibly as much as 150,000. No one has ever found such ancient jewelry before. Arab media are publishing this photograph. This is it, a sensation. The excavation itself took place in the west of the kingdom from 2014 to 2018, but apparently the find was thoroughly studied and the results of the work were published only now. It is reported that there were only 33 beads in total. They were found at the entrance to Bismun Cave, and besides the beads, ancient tools were also discovered there. Scientists believe that the jewelry could have literally adorned its owner, as well as told others about his social status. Basically, if you see someone wearing beads, that's it. He's the king. By the way, it's completely unclear what gender the owner was. Maybe it was a man who wore them, not a woman. A wooden structure that's 500,000 years old. Archaeologists from China made an astonishing discovery near the Kalambo waterfall in South Africa. They found traces of life from ancient members of the Homo genus that are about 476,000 years old. The main discovery is fragments of a wooden structure, which indicates that these people not only used wood to make tools, but also for construction. The Kalambo Falls site itself is an archaeological treasure where artifacts from various cultures have been found. But this recent discovery has changed our understanding of the way ancient people lived. The wooden structures dating back to the Middle Pleistocene era prove that people of that time could lead a settled lifestyle, engaging in construction and woodworking. Scientists have concluded that these structures were part of a dwelling or another large building. It is possible that they used them not only as shelters, but also for social or religious ceremonies. However, the question of who exactly created this architectural heritage remains open. It could have been Homo erectus or another representative of the Homo genus. Now, scientists have every reason to believe that ancient representatives of the Homo genus were much more advanced than we previously thought. Stone phallus in Spain. Get ready for a fascinating story about how archaeologists in Spain discovered a secret item of ancient warriors, which had first noticeably surprised the researchers. I'm talking about a stone penis, which turned out to be a whetstone. The archaeologists were excavating near the Mera Tower in the city of Rio de Vigo. This tower was demolished in 1476 during the Irmandiño uprising, when peasants rebelled against the Spanish aristocracy. But here's the interesting part. They came across a stone 15 centimeters long, which, as I said, was shaped like a penis. In general, such a phallic image is often found in prehistoric symbolism, but it is rarely seen in medieval artifacts. That's why the researchers were surprised. And it turns out that this stone is not just a stone. It was a whetstone used to sharpen weapons before battles during the Irmandiño uprising. After all, it's not just modern people who love things that are stylish and humorous. Our ancestors also had a sense of humor. Researchers note that the stone reflects a symbolic connection between violence, weapons, and masculinity. A mysterious cave. Scientists discovered a mysterious object in Antarctica using Google Maps. It's not just an object, it's a cave hidden beneath the glaciers. The scientists published a video on YouTube showing the vault of this cave. Some people believe that the cave could have been man-made. In the video, you can see a perfectly shaped vault, 23 meters high and 76 meters wide. The scientists noticed strange paths and steps at the entrance to the cave, which gives reason to think about their artificial origin. Others think that it is a secret facility for UFOs or a top-secret military base. There are also those who believe that these are the remains of architecture from an ancient civilization. Official science remains silent for now, but everyone agrees. With global warming, Antarctica will reveal many more secrets. The most ancient abstract art. Strangely enough, the oldest example of abstract art is this mollusk shell from the island of Java, Indonesia. A team of scientists from Leiden University in the Netherlands concluded that the shell is at least 500,000 years old. The markings on its surface were carved in zigzag shapes, and the tool used was most likely a shark tooth, which was found in the same place as the main discovery. When it comes to cave paintings, the oldest ones are considered to be the artworks found in caves on the island of Sulawesi, in the eastern part of Borneo. According to scientists, these drawings are at least 40,000 years old. The paintings consist of hand stencils and images of local animals. One of them, called Babarusa, is 35,400 years old, which makes it the oldest known work of visual art. Before that, the oldest were considered to be the images of animals from the late Paleolithic found in the Chauvet Cave in France. Archaeologists estimate their age to be 30 to 32,000 years. And a couple more words about art. The oldest musical instruments to date are bone flutes found in the upper reaches of the Danube in southern Germany. One flute is made from mammoth bones, the other from bird bones. Professor Nick Conrad estimates his find to be 42 to 43,000 years old. It is likely that people came to this area just before the onset of global cooling, and this place was used as a base for rest and social communication. The oldest masks are a collection of early human creations, which are 9,000 years old. The stylized masks have several holes around the edges, which were most likely used to secure them to the head with straps. They were discovered in present-day Israel, in the Judean hills in the Judean desert, and are now on display at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. How did the first paper money appear? A long time ago, in the days of the ancient Phoenicians, trade was a complicated affair. To simplify the exchange of goods, they came up with the idea of using coins as a universal means of exchange. However, coins were heavy, and slaves carried them using special handles. Then the Chinese entered the scene with a revolutionary idea. Around the 1st century before Christ, they invented leather banknotes. They were made from the skin of white deer and marked with special signs. They could be used for purchases anywhere in the empire, and refusing to accept them could cost you your life. These leather money notes became the ancestors of the paper bills we know today. Around the 800s, the Chinese decided to try creating paper money using the technique of woodblock printing. This is a method of engraving on wood and printing on paper. But these flying money notes, as they were called, were not taken seriously at first, since a paper bill could easily be blown away by a gust of wind. Initially, this paper money was used as guarantees for debt obligations, but over time it became a full-fledged means of payment. Paper money made trade much more convenient. Merchants no longer had to carry heavy coins, and the metal could be used for other important needs. These new flying money resembled checks more and were used for large transactions. In just a few decades, paper money went from being a credit certificate to a full-fledged means of payment, turning into what we call paper money today. Europe at that time was still immersed in the Middle Ages, but the Chinese idea was so groundbreaking that it spread all over the world. And so, in 1601, Sweden became the first European country to print and put paper money into circulation. This is how the history of paper money, as we know and use it today, began. A volcano spewing gold. Mount Erebus, the largest volcano in Antarctica, literally spits out the finest crystals of metallic gold into the air. Gold particles ranging from 0.1 to 20 micrometers are found in volcanic gases, and up to 60 micrometers in the nearby snow. Interestingly, although other volcanoes are also known for their gold emissions, Mount Erebus is the only one that releases gold in its metallic form. Before you decide to go searching for gold in Antarctica, Let me disappoint you. Mount Erebus emits only about 80 grams of gold per day. It's more of a geological curiosity than anything else. However, knowing that volcanoes can concentrate metal may help geologists better locate gold deposits. The burial of a teenager with 140 dogs? Russian archaeologists in Egypt have discovered a unique burial that is several thousand years old. During the excavations at one of the necropolises, researchers found the burial of a teenager, and next to him, 142 dogs. The boy was 8 or 9 years old, and his remains were lying on top of the dog's remains. In most cases, these were puppies, and the approximate age of the burial is from the 1st century before Christ to the 1st century AD, belonging to the Roman period. It is very rare for a dog burial to be associated with a human burial. If something like this did occur, it would usually be just 1 or 2 dogs at most. Once at an elite cemetery in Hierakonpolis, a grave of a little boy with 12 dogs was found, but even that burial cannot compare to the 142 dogs found in one place. Dogs are thought to have played a significant role in ancient Egyptian life and beliefs. The well-known gods Apuet and Anubis, who accompanied the dead to the afterlife, had dog-headed heads. At some point in time, animals served as amulets and were placed under the foundations of buildings. Archaeologists have also confirmed that animals were often sacrificed. There is an opinion that these dogs lived in some kind of ancient kennel where they were bred in large numbers to be sacrificed. Scientists were able to find traces of clay, beetle larvae, and fly pupae on the remains of the dogs. This indicates that after death, the animals spent some time outdoors near a body of water. It is possible that an abnormal flood caused the mass death of the animals and the child, and that the teenager at that time was taking care of the dogs in the kennel. And we shouldn't rule out the possibility that the mass burial could be connected to a magical ritual. And if we take into account the burial site, it looks like the border of a new cemetery. In those years, dog burials were used to mark the boundary of a new cemetery. The ancient Egyptians had a lot of peculiarities that seem disgusting and illogical to us today, but we have no right to judge them. After all, the boundaries of what is considered reasonable and civilized have constantly changed throughout our history. What seemed normal 1,000 or even 100 years ago now seems absurd, and it works the other way around as well. A casket with relics of Polish monarchs. This elegant casket, with the inscription Izabela Czartoryska, is not just an antique item, but a whole symbol of Polish history. In 1800, Princess Izabela Czartoryska gathered a unique collection of relics in it, connected to Polish kings and great historical events. In total, the casket contained 73 items, from personal belongings of monarchs to fragments of weapons and clothing, symbolizing national heritage and the spirit of resistance. Izabela considered it her mission to preserve Polish identity during the difficult times of the country's partitions. Her casket became part of the first museum in Poland, the Temple of the Sibyl, created in Puławy, where she invited guests to remind them of the glory of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Unfortunately, like many national treasures, the casket did not escape a tragic fate. In 1939, during the Nazi invasion of Poland, it was looted, and to this day, some of the relics are considered lost. How do you become a millionaire from $500? A story that starts as a comedy and ends almost like a crime thriller. In the United States, a simple rule has been in place for decades. If you don't pay for your storage unit, everything inside goes up for auction. Buyers don't know what's hidden behind the door: trash, old magazines, furniture, or something that could change your life. A man in California bid only $500 on a storage unit, and when the door opened, he found a locked safe inside. He called in some professionals. 2 of them tried to open it but failed. Only the third one managed to do it. And that's when everyone was thrown off balance. Inside, there were $7.5 million in cash. The money was old, but in perfect condition, as if it had just come from the bank's reserve vaults. The auction was held by Den Dodson, the star of the show Storage Wars. He later said that the former owners of the storage unit woke up, saw news stories about their safe, and immediately ran to a lawyer. Through their attorneys, they offered the buyer $600,000 for the return. The man refused, and negotiations began. They finally agreed on a sum of $1.2 million. The winner returned $7.5 million but kept $1.2 million for himself as a thank you, plus an extra $500 on top. because the storage unit was bought with his own money. The world still keeps things that were never meant to be preserved, and I'm sure we haven't even uncovered the strangest ones yet. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, everyone.